Hello and welcome to the show. Yes, welcome to Petrol Heads. Sorry we haven't been here for a while. Reasons, stuff's come up. Anyway, welcome to the Petrol Heads Christmas special, and the topic of today, muscle cars. I've always been a fan of muscle cars, the brutish rebelliousness of them, of a huge V8, very jelly suspension, and just the general badass, get out of my way look. It's always been menacing to look at a muscle car from any angle, and definitely I love the style and the characteristics, the over-ego that these muscle cars have, especially the classic ones. So what I decided to do for this episode was let's get 3 classic muscle cars and compare them against each other to see which is the best. So the 3 muscle cars in question are the original Dodge Challenger RT, the Holden Torana, and the Chevy Camaro. I was going to include the Mustang in this, but I can't get an original Mustang. Anyway, I have 3 challenges set up for these cars, and then we will find out which is the best. First up, we have the top speed test. We've gone to the airport down next to the Outback. And what we're going to do is we're going to give the cars 1 mile to go from a stand start to the highest speed they can. We'll record the speed. The person with the highest speed wins. Now first up, we have the Chevy Camaro. Now this car should do relatively well at this. It has 375 horsepower and 415 foot-pounds of torque. It does weigh 3,500 pounds though, so definitely the power to weight ratio isn't the best. So my predictions are it will do okay at the challenges, but I guess we'll just have to see how it goes.
I've set you a route to the nearest PR stunt.
And that's a good target by the Camaro. It's set after 1 mile of solid full throttle driving. 141 miles an hour is its top speed. Now, onto the Challenger. Now the Dodge Challenger, I think, is really the Hulk. It's the Goliath in all of it, in all of these cars. It has 425 horsepower, and it has 490 foot-pounds of torque. It only weighs 3,800 pounds as well. So definitely, this is the car to look out for. This is the benchmark. And just as I expected, the Dodge Challenger's over 400 horsepower V8 has surged it into the lead ahead of the Camaro, with a top speed of 147 miles an hour. That's quite a lot actually, especially with a car with only a 4-speed that came out in the late 60s. Can you imagine? It's 1969 and you've just bought this, and as you leave in lot you put your foot down. This is fast by today's standards. Now next up we have the Holden Torana, straight from Aussie, eh? I'm gonna stop, I'm sorry. But straight from Aussie we have the Holden Torana. This is really on the opposite end of the scale to the Challenger. It's the underdog. It only has 216 horsepower and 295 foot-pounds of torque. It has almost half of everything to the Challenger, but it also has half the weight. It weighs 2,500 pounds. So my logic is picking this car, it may not have the most power, but it's lighter, so it could use its lack of power more effectively. But I'm not holding my breath on that. Oh boy, yes, unfortunately the Holden Torana doing not the best. It only got 130 miles an hour at the speed camera, so it's not going the best for the Torana. But the Challenger gets the first point for the first challenge. Now we decide to take the muscle cars around the test track. This is a little rainforest circuit that we have in Yarra Valley. So we're going to take the cars around, give them a couple laps, and best lap time wins. First up we have the Camaro. The Camaro to me has always been my favourite muscle car. A lot of people are always hailing the Mustang, but I've always been a fan of the Camaro. It's always been the one that I look up to as the muscle car. I like the Chargers, I like the Challengers, and the very long list of muscle cars that have come out. But the Camaro was the first muscle car I recognised. It's what got me into cars, so I have quite a special connection to this car. When it comes to the track, all those memories, poof. I have not driven this car in a Forza game in properly in quite a while, especially stock. It's interesting. The power is good, but definitely very torquey, so if you shift down gears quickly, you're going to be spinning those wheels and having a bit of handling issues. The brakes are half decent, especially for a car its age, and the handling you did have to get used to. It was a bit loose-ish, but definitely it was very jelly and very... It's really hard to find the right word. It feels like an old car. You can tell its age compared to what has come out today. If you put me in a brand new Camaro and the old one, I could easily say 20,000 differences between them just on the handling front. Do I hate it? No. I still love the car. It's fantastic. It sounds great and it is a lot of fun. But you do have to get used to the driving style of these cars. Now, the Dodge Challenger. I've never really paid much attention to the Challenger. I've always looked at it and gone, that's pretty cool, but I've never paid much attention to the classic Dodge muscle cars. But I've started getting more into them recently when I realised how great they were, especially the RT version, because this has 425 horsepower. It's ridiculous. But I will say it does have the same problems as the Camaro. The handling, it's a bit better. The steering, turn in air, but the suspension is just as jelly and it feels even crazier because you have more power to deal with. But I will say, I still love the Camaro, but definitely my opinion has shifted a little bit when it comes to this, especially this car, especially in this purple, because it looks really good, and I actually really like the Challenger now. It's really good. The acceleration is brutal, especially for a car its age, and well, of course the suspension is not the greatest and stuff. If you put proper set of coilovers and some sticky tires on it, this thing would be a monster, and I'm serious about that. But in its stock form, it's better than I expected, especially after driving the Camaro, but definitely it is far worse than any of today's machines. But it is still definitely something to be respected. I will definitely give it that. It is a very ridiculous car. It wants to kill you. Now, the Holden Torana. Now, as I said before, it did not do well on the top speed run, but I thought it could really make up for it here, with its almost half power difference to the Challenger. It also weighed a lot less. So my logic was, it's a smaller car, it's a lighter car, it's a couple years newer. So I thought maybe that would mean it would be more agile. And yes and no. Yes, because if you told me to pick between the three cars, which one I liked driving the most, the Torana. It felt the nicest to drive on the track. But it really didn't come through when it came to the times. Annoyingly, the horsepower could not make the difference. I know, it's a shame. I know, I tried. Anyway, I have the times here. The Camaro got a 125 dead, the Challenger a 123.3, and the Torana a 125.4. Yes, so my logic with all of this, pick a car that's got, I don't know, less power but weighs less and it'll be great. That was my logic, and my logic failed me. As it usually does, but I don't care. So, well, it's not going well for the Torana, but maybe, I don't know. But now onto the final challenge, yes. Because it's a Christmas special, we had to have some snow, and we have a Crown Vic? What? Allow me to introduce the final challenge. This is the getaway. Now, in the world of muscle cars and rebellions, well, you got to have, well, of course, the police, because most people who buy muscle cars are rebellious and, yeah, like the Duke. I think they've just been watching too many Dukes of Hazzards, but anyway, ignoring that. The idea of this challenge was to see if the classic muscle cars could keep up with a newer cop car. So, this is a 2010 Ford Crown Victoria. It has 275 horsepower, about 300 foot-pounds of torque, but it weighs 4,000 pounds. It's the heaviest car that we're doing today. But it does have the advantage of having a modern engine, fuel injection and all that. It has modern suspension, modern brakes, modern everything. So what we were going to do was drive this and all the other muscle cars down this course. It's called Devil's Descent. Yes, I love that. It's amazing. And what the logic behind this is, well, what we're going to do is we're going to lap the Ford Crown Vic around, and that's going to be the benchmark time. And if the muscle cars couldn't beat it, then, well, what's the point? So this was going to be an all or nothing challenge, and I wasn't going to have like a couple laps. Like on the test track where I gave myself, as you saw on the lap counter, 10 laps or more to try to give the cars the best shot. What a done. All the cars had one go, and that was it. If they could not beat it, then, well, what's the point of getting it? Which means they were immediately disqualified from the whole competition. I did try to, now to make it easier for the Crown Vic, or make it more difficult for the other cars, I gave the Crown Vic studded snow tyres to make it grip better, as you can see here, by my awful driving. There was a problem with this, especially keeping the muscle, my logic was to keep the muscle cars on the stock tyres. Yeah, it didn't go as well as I'd hoped. What ended up happening was I tried to drive the Camaro and I hit every wall and arrived in a minute after the Crown Vic. Yeah, so I decided to give all the cars snow tyres as well, and just relied on that the Crown Vic was newer, so it'd be a good challenge. And it was. It actually was, and I was very impressed with how the Crown Vic did, especially because this is basically a stock Crown Vic but with police lights and some new tyres. So, this is an all-or-nothing challenge, and of course one and done, and definitely, I gotta say, I like how the Crown Vic looks, by the way. It looks very good. Anyway, so, the time for the Crown Vic. This is the benchmark that the muscle cars have to beat, otherwise they're out of the competition. Also, the snow looks very nice, by the way. I'm very happy with the Blizzard expansion, and of course Christmas special. So, for the time for the Crown Victoria. The Crown Vic got a 2 minutes 48.2. So now it is up to the Challenger to beat it. If I'm honest, I think I'm better at driving the Challenger on snow than I am on driving on our test track, which is quite an interesting concept in my point of view. But anyway, ignoring that, this car is a lot of fun to drive in the snow. It just feels appropriate thrashing around, not on a public road, in some backlot area in the snow, and definitely that's quite fun. But I think it's just because I have an addiction to driving in the snow, especially because we get none in this country. God damn it, Mother Nature. Anyway, having a rant, but I'm having quite a bit of a bad rant here. But what I found really interesting is that it felt like the car worked here. It felt like it did really work, because, well, except for the brakes being terrible, especially on all, well, probably only the Torana and the Crown Vic had decent brakes. The Camaro was pretty bad and the Challenger was awful when it came to its brakes. But, especially with the snow tyres, it worked here. It had the power to really pull you through. It had the tyres for the grip, and also the jelly suspension, which was ridiculous on the test track and really hard to get used to. It made sense here because it soaked up all the bumps and got used to all the different altitude changes and all the different textures on the ground. Yes, I'm speaking very scientifically. So I'm very happy with how the Challenger did. It did very, very well. It did very well in my point of view because I got more used to it easier on the first go. It didn't take 10 laps around track to get used to it, and I only had one run anyway. So it made sense here. It really did well, because if you just put better brakes on it, that would be a pretty good car on its own. But definitely, and the thing is to remember with the Camaro, like the muscle cars, I put them on snow tyres, but Forza lets you change the width of the tyres. These were still the stock, quite skinny actually, width tyres. With the Crown Vic, I stretched the tyres out as far as I could. So I think the Crown Vic on 300 inch, I think, or like size 300 tyres, wide, and the muscle cars running on size 215, I think. So definitely you have more surface area, which means for more grip. So the Challenger was doing very well. I could definitely feel some wheel spin occasionally, which was a bit annoying sometimes to deal with, because of course the huge amount of power trying to put it down, even with the snow tires. There are occasional little bits of wheel spin. That was only at the low end when you were coming out of a really slow corner. But other than that, I was very impressed with how the Challenger did. I thought it really made sense here on this track. Me getting a bit reckless at the end. But anyway, that's done. Now, on to the Camaro, and to make it more festive, I gave it a Christmas paint job. Thank you, Storefront, for having one of those. I tried to get one for the Challenger, couldn't find one. But luckily the Torana had one as well that Forza actually sent to me. They actually sent me that version of the Torana, which already had the snow tires on it and had a holidays paint on it. But I had to find this Camaro one off the Storefront. Now, enough rambling. The Chevy Camaro, how did it do? It felt better than the Challenger. It had as jelly of a suspension as the Challenger, but it felt better. And you can see them in the times. I'll reveal them at the end of the Torana's run. It felt better because it could put its power down better. Yes, less horsepower sometimes is not very good, but in some areas it's better. Just keep in mind, the Camaro is only in the 300 horsepower range when it comes to its horsepower, while the Challenger's in the 400 range. But that's actually a good thing, especially when it comes to the type of track we have here, which is lots of slow corners which require good traction. Because this car could put its what power it had better. It could use its power more effectively. And definitely it was easier to harness and easier to use compared to the Challenger. The Challenger was still a lot of fun, you could still use it. But definitely with the Camaro, it was easier to just go full throttle sooner and more often than with the Camaro. But definitely, and this is, as I was saying before, it makes sense with the jelly suspension. It makes it soak up the bumps and all that, so it can deal with the bounciness, so it just has to deal with traction. And the snow tyres, which are studded snow tyres which stick into the ground and claw its way through to give your car more grip, those worked as well. So it definitely worked. And definitely, this is one of the few situations where less power actually gives you more. Well, as we saw with the Camaro. Probably the only area it struggled with emphasis a little bit, was on the straight, because it still had enough power to keep it going. It had more power than the Crown Vic and weighed a little bit less. Well, I think it weighed a bit less. So definitely it was going much faster. But, definitely was going a bit slower than the Challenger, but had the same problem as the Challenger. The brakes are awful! I had to brake much earlier than I wanted to, but it's got the stock brakes. I was not letting myself change them, but anyway, that's that. Now, this car did very well. I will reveal the times course later, but I was happy with how the car did, and also the paint job looked good. It made it blend in with its environment. It looks like a Yeti in the snow. You've got a double blink to make sure it's there, and I'm going to stop talking and start talking about the Holden Torana. That's a good idea. Now, Holden Torana. I really was starting to lose faith in it, to be honest. I was going, oh, well, really, what's the point? It's been losing by a lot in these other challenges, so how's it going to do in this? But a small smidge of me, a very small smidge, thought that maybe, this was what it was good at. It was small, it was light, it was underpowered, which means it could use what little power it had to the most with those snow tyres. And then the rest of me thought, just give up, please. What's the chance it'll win? But as I did the lap, that small smidge of me spoke louder, because this car is really good. It has much sportier, better suspension. It's a bit less jelly than the other cars. Because when the other cars had really jelly suspension, it meant it soaked up the bumps better, but it was a bit too jelly. It was a bit too wallowy and shakes about too much, which means when you're trying to turn to the corners, it kind of just wallows about and makes it harder to drive. With this, it had a bit of give in it, so it had a bit of springiness in it, but it still was pretty rigid. It was rigid enough, at least. And with the snow tyres, for the stock tyres, they were actually quite big. I think they were 250s, I think, in between the Crown Vic and the Camaro and the Challenger. But I will be honest, I was not expecting this. A car with 200 horsepower was doing this well. I could chuck this car around and have such a riot driving this thing, because this thing was quick. And you can see this here compared to the Challenger's lap. The Challenger was going breakneck speeds down the straight and then kind of flopping about and going 2 miles an hour around the corners. Meanwhile, the Holden was being really consistent and fast through the hairpins, which really made up for it when it came to here. Now, it did have the problem that I was expecting it to have, which was the straight. It was struggling to pull. So, yeah, this is where the 215 horsepower kind of, yeah. But it did make up for it on the way there in the corners, I will say that for sure. But, and also the brakes are actually better because it's a slightly newer car, so it made me less annoyed that I had to brake half a mile before the turn. Now, coming into the final sections here, as we come yet to a close for the Torana's lap. By the way, isn't the paint job on this thing actually really good? You'll see it in some delicious, very nice scenic B-roll shots in a second. But as we come to the end, I was astonished. I was absolutely astonished with what the Torana did. By the way, here's the amazing paint job, thanks to Turn 10. But what was astounding for me is that my footage is corrupting. I forgot that my Elgato died. You know what? We're still going. I don't care. Anyway, all I have to say is that everything's gone wrong. Oh, what a great way to end a video, with everything dying and blowing up and destroying itself. A proper way to end a Petrol Heads video, especially for the end of the year. All I have to say is thank you very much, everyone, for watching Petrol Heads series. I'm so happy that I was able to share my experiences with you, because I've wanted to do this show for a long time, and I'm very happy that I've been able to do this. It's taught me so much about editing. I started the series to learn about editing, and do you guys remember the first episode of my old channel, me with that Rolls Royce? Spoke too fast, spoke too loud, couldn't drive, my editing was awful, but now these videos I would actually watch, and I have actually, without cringing. But anyway, that's enough about me. Videos will resume next year. Don't know about scheduling, especially because I'm going into studying for exams and stuff, so definitely it's going to be very sporadic between releases, so just keep that in mind. Thank you. Anyway, that is it for this episode of Petrol Heads. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Thank you for putting up with me having awful release dates and cringy and slightly annoying videos. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Merry Christmas. Have a happy new year. And until next time, goodbye.